Some of the manifestation of nephrotoxicity would be that in general, the symptoms are similar to those of renal failure. That is excess urea, that is azotemia. There can be anemia. There can be acidosis in the body, overhydration, which can present in the form of edema, high blood pressure, hypertension, and decreased urine output. Or it can also be that without a change in urine output, there can be nephrotoxic effects. So then comes investigations. Investigations would be BUN, creatinine clearance, serum creatinine, serum potassium, urine analysis. Other blood tests may be done to find the underlying cause of the kidney failure, like abdominal ultrasound, X-rays, CTs, MRIs, ultrasound. If there is any blockage in the urinary tract, you can also find that out. So some of the risk factors, there are specific and patient specific risk factors. Patient specific risk factors के तीन major causes would be reduced muscle mass, lower total body water, and hypoalbuminemia. So, if we talk about patient specific risk factors, age older than 60, which will be a reason for reduced muscle mass and volume depletion, plus neonates and female sex, underlying renal insufficiency, already having AKI, acute kidney injury, or chronic kidney disease. There can be volume depletion. If the patient is vomiting or on diuretics, they will have a volume depletion or have diarrhea. They will be vulnerable to the toxic effects on the kidney. Then congestive heart failure, hepatic failure, hyperbilirubinemia, or sepsis. Then drug-specific risk factors. Toxicity of therapeutic and diagnostic agents may be inherent to the pharmacologic compound itself, like chemotherapeutic drugs. Kidney is especially poised as a target toxicity, since it receives a significant percentage of the cardiac output that exposes it to the drug and drug metabolites. So, as the water flows from the tubules, it is reabsorbed, and then more absorptions takes place, and the tubular fluid gets concentrated. So the drug concentration also becomes higher in the kidneys, which can be injurious to the kidneys. In tubular cells, the collecting duct and loop of Henle are at a greater risk for nephrotoxicity because they are highly metabolically active. Okay. Generally, the mechanism of action of nephrotoxicity that takes place are divided into these parts. That is, change in glomerular hemodynamics, tubular cell toxicity, inflammation, crystal nephropathy, rhabdomyolysis, thrombotic microangiopathy. So, first we'll look into these general mechanisms, and then we'll study a few drugs which are the major nephrotoxic drugs कि उनके mechanisms इनमें से कौन से हैं. ठीक है. So change in glomerular hemodynamics. Kidneys can keep a constant filtration rate as well as maintain the displacement of urine through regulation of blood flow in efferent and efferent arteries for adjustment of or maintenance of intraglomerular pressure. So NSAIDs, AC inhibitors, and ARB interfere with this kidney ability to auto-regulate glomerular pressure and decrease in GFR. Some of the drugs like calcium inhibitors, cyclosporins cause dose-dependent vasoconstriction of efferent arterioles, leading to renal impairment. Tubular cell toxicity. This toxicity occurs due to the damaged mitochondria in tubules. There can be a disrupted tubular transport system. There can be increase in oxidative stress and formation of free radicals. Some of the drugs that affects these proximal tubules would be aminoglycosides, amphotericin B, some fungisones, antiretrovirals like edifovir, tenofovir, cisplatin, contrast dyes, immunoglobulins, or mannitol. So, inflammation. Nephrotoxic drugs often induce inflammation in glomerulus, proximal tubules, and surrounding kidney matrix. Inflammation that disturb normal kidney function can be of three types. That is glomerulonephritis, acute interstitial nephritis, and chronic interstitial nephritis. So, glomerulonephritis has been shown to to be closely related to proteinuria, occurs primarily through the immune-mediated pathway rather than through direct toxicity. So, the drug causing glomerulonephritis would be gold therapy, hydrazine, interferon alpha, lithium, NSAIDs, propyl thiouracil, and pemidronate. Then acute interstitial nephritis due to allergic response to to a suspected drug. Drugs either bind to the antigen or behave like an antigen and deposit into the interstitium and induce immune response. Some of the examples would be allopurinol, NSAIDs, antibiotics like beta-lactam and quinolones, loop, furosemide diuretic, thiazide diuretic, PPIs like omeprazole, pantoprazole, phenytoin, and antivirals like acyclovir. Then chronic interstitial nephritis, some of the drug causing that chronic interstitial nephritis, the mechanism of action is basically same like acute interstitial nephritis, but it also presents in the form of the drug either binds to the antigen or behaves like an antigen. So some of the drugs that could cause chronic interstitial nephritis would be calci-urine inhibitors, lithium, and some anti-cancer drugs and analgesics like acetaminophen, aspirin, etc. in higher doses. In case of chronic interstitial nephritis, early detection is especially important because it is difficult to diagnose until most of the functionality of the kidney is destroyed. Okay. Then crystal nephropathy. Drugs produce in some of the drugs would produce insoluble crystals that deposit usually in the distal tubular lumen, obstructing the urine flow and eliciting an interstitial reaction. The formation of the insoluble crystal depends on the acidity of the urine, the drug concentration, the drugs causing this crystal nephropathy would be ampicillin, ciprofloxacin, sulfonamides, antivirals, acyclovir, methotrexate, etc. Then rhabdomyolysis. Rhabdomyolysis is basically a condition in which the muscle fiber content are released into the bloodstream when skeletal muscle is destroyed due to some injury. As renal muscle cells disintegrate due to damage in the muscles, myoglobin and serum creatinine kinase are released into the blood. Released myoglobin degrades and depresses the function of filtration in kidney, resulting in acute tubular necrosis and renal failure. Some of the major drugs that causes rhabdomyolysis would be drug abuse from heroin, methadone, and statins, and also as well as in alcoholism. Then thrombotic angiopathy, organ damage by platelet thrombi in microcirculation. Antiplatelet agents including cyclosporins, mitomycin C, clopidogrel, and quinines have been shown to cause thrombotic microangiopathy. So some of the major nephrotoxic drugs that all of you need to remember would be aminoglycoside, NSAIDs, AC inhibitors, amphotericin B, sulfonamides, methicillin, and radioactive contrast. Whenever giving these drugs, the risk of causing nephrotoxicity is very high. So we always have to keep that in mind. So aminoglycoside induced nephrotoxicity, how it happens is the aminoglycosides is well known to cause nephrotoxicity and autotoxicity, as we all know. The risk of nephrotoxicity is higher with prolonged duration of therapy and hypovolemic state and pre-existing chronic kidney disease and old age. The acute kidney injury manifests after 5 to 7 days of therapy. Renal complications are usually dose dependent, and aminoglycosides are non-protein bound and freely filtered in the glomeruli. Due to their cationic potential, they absorb in proximal tubules by endocytosis, which leads to accumulation of the drugs in the cortical tubular cells, which results in tubular toxicity, which we have already, the mechanism of it we have already studied before. So intracellular accumulation results in either tubular cell death and functional alteration of the cell membrane transporters. Aminoglycoside can accumulate in the distal tubule and collecting ducts, resulting in distal tubular dysfunction. Some of the clinical presentations would be non-oliguric acute kidney injury, proteinuria, glycosuria, hypomagnesemia, hypokalemia, and hypocalcemia. Then NSAIDs induced nephrotoxicity. First of all, NSAIDs is a widely used drug for pain and inflammation. So, how NSAIDs work is prostaglandin inhibition uh, explains the many of its renal complication. The prostaglandin-induced vasodilation is critical for maintaining adequate renal perfusion, and NSAIDs impair that vasodilation and alter the renal hemodynamics. This effect is magnified in patients with hypovolemia and concomitantly using AC inhibitors. NSAIDs mediated prostaglandin inhibition can result in hyperkalemia and metabolic acidosis. So in aminoglycosides there was hypokalemia, and in NSAIDs there is hyperkalemia. Then AC inhibitors and ARBs. These are widely used in treatment of hypertension, chronic heart failure, and delayed progression of diabetic nephropathy. In this the angiotensin 2 constricts both efferent and efferent arterioles. The resultant intraglomerular pressure, which is critical for stabilizing the GFR. So what AC inhibitors and ARBs do is they interfere with this autoregulation of the GFR. In certain situations, loss of autoregulation potentiates and precipitates the acute kidney injury. And amphotericin B, these are used in the treatment of serious and life-threatening fungal infections, and they alter the membrane permeability of the fungal cells. They cause dose-dependent toxicity, and conventional form is more nephrotoxic. Two mechanisms in which amphotericin B can explain the acute kidney injury causes. One is by that it can bind to a cholesterol molecule in the cellular membrane, which will alter its permeability. This can be toxic to renal tubular cells and result in acute tubular necrosis and tubular dysfunction, which manifests as renal tubular acidosis, urinary concentration defects, and electrolyte disturbances. The second mechanism would be renal vasoconstriction, which can cause volume depletion and can worsen the nephrotoxic effect. Then sulfonamide-induced nephrotoxicity. Sulfamethoxazole trimethoprim is the most widely used sulfa drugs. Acute kidney injury is most commonly secondary to acute interstitial nephritis. High dose of sulfadiazine can cause crystal nephropathy. Crystal precipitation usually occurs in acidic urine and in low flow states. Then methicillin-induced nephrotoxicity. The kidney damage usually occurs as a result of allergic reaction to the antibiotic. Mild kidney damage may cause few, if any, symptoms, whereas severe damage can ultimately result in kidney failure. Symptoms may be acute, subacute, or chronic, depending on the severity of the toxicity. Kidney problems usually occur with chronic use of the drug. Factors such as age, dehydration, and underlying kidney problems may also influence a person's risk of developing kidney problems and the severity of the symptoms. Then radiographic contrast. Contrast-induced nephropathy is defined as impairment of renal function within 42 or 72 hours of intravenous contrast administration. So renal insufficiency, it should be acute, occurring within 2 to 3 days. The serum creatinine levels peak between 2 and 5 days and usually return to normal in 14 days. The risk factor for CIN can be divided into patient, procedure, and contrast related. So whenever giving contrast, it is always preferable to do the kidney function test beforehand. Then only we can give contrast, and there is a cutoff value for serum creatinine as well for that. So some of the general precautions whenever giving these drugs that all doctors have to take, that are that so that nephrotoxicity doesn't occur, is that they include using alternative non-nephrotoxic drugs whenever possible, correcting the risk factor that if the person is dehydrated, we have to give adequate hydration first to the patient with giving the drug as well. Then assessing baseline renal function before initiation of a therapy, following by adjusting the dosage of the medication. Then monitoring renal functions and vital signs during therapy, and avoiding nephrotoxic drug combination. So it's good to not give two nephrotoxic drugs together. Otherwise, it will cause a much greater nephrotoxic response. So, how will it nephrotoxicity present in a case? This will be an example of a case of nephrotoxicity. There will be a 60-year-old male was admitted in medicine ward for treatment of urinary tract infection. His treatment was undergoing with aminoglycosides, amikacin. But on fifth day of his admission, he starts complaining of bilateral lumbar pain, oliguria, fatigue, drowsiness, and confusion. So, in his past history, he was treated for tuberculosis 4 years back. In drug history, he was taking carvedilol 6.25 mg OD. In surgical history, it was not significant. Family history: mother is hypertensive, father is alive and healthy. Social history: lives with his family in sheltered housing, with all basic facilities available and no history of smoking. So in general physical examination, his weight was 64 kgs, height 5'8". The vitals were normal. There was no signs of the vitals in vital signs. There was he was febrile with 100-degree Fahrenheit temperature. Then there was no anemia, jaundice, or clubbing or cyanosis. In his pulse was 72. BP was 135 by 84. There was no murmurs noted. Respiratory system was normal, abdominal system was normal, and GCS was 15 by 15. So when we did the basic investigations, the urea was 3.2, that is the raised level. Creatinine was also increased, which was 2.6. There was also hyper anatremia, that is 148, and there was hyperkalemia as well. So on urine DR, there were occasional crystals and moderate bacteria. And on urine CS, E. coli more than 100,000 CFU per milliliter of urine. So uh, the diagnosis would be drug-induced toxicity, drug-induced nephrotoxicity, because of starting of amikacin. There was this response of nephrotoxicity. So the management would be we have to stop the nephrotoxic drug and start another drug, that would be IV amoxicillin, and also monitor the urine creatinine and electrolytes of the patient continually. Okay, so this was the presentation. I hope everybody